So I'm talking about grafting, which was the topic for last week, but I wasn't able to get to the lab video, so I'm doing that now. And if any of you have grafting knives at home that maybe you got for this class and you want to give it a try, now's a good time, because for a lot of plants, they haven't broken bud yet, but they are getting close to it, and especially when the weather starts to warm up and the bark starts slipping, which we talked about that, it'll make it easy to do different types of like chip budding and tea budding that we talked about. So because you guys have already done the vegetable grafting in class, I'm just going to show you about the different budding techniques. So this is actually from an apple tree, and you can see the dormant buds on it. You can see the dormant buds on it, the leaf scar from the previous year. And so that's what you would be going after for budding, is to get one of those buds. And a lot of plant material that I have to use are not dormant, so it's a little bit different, but you can still do budding on that. So I've got my hibiscus that we're actually going to do the budding on, but I wanted to show you what you might find outside if you wanted to try it yourself. The other thing is that a grafting knife, you need to respect it, but you don't want to be afraid of it. They are only sharp on one side, so it's meant for the downward slicing that you do for like taking the chip out or the bud out. So, just pressing your finger against it, you're not going to cut yourself. But if you happen to have your hand below what you're cutting and you slice down, you can definitely cut yourself. So it's always an interesting lab to do when you guys are here, because we talk a lot about safety first, and this fun acronym WOMP, which is where are my fingers at, so that you are always remembering to have your hand above the knife when you're taking it down, because if you have it below, believe me, you will either cut into your pointer finger in the back or straight down into your thumb. So have your hand above it, and on a stick like this that's not attached to anything, it's pretty easy to cut because you can put pressure down below. On a plant that is alive, it can be difficult to have your fingers in the right area that make it easy to cut. So this would be just collecting a bud. All right, I cut behind that bud. You are looking to get some of that vascular cambium, remember? Just because that's what we're going to be trying to line up. Let me see if I finally didn't get it deep enough. There we go. All right, so that would be the chip bud that I collected off of that stem. So we're looking for, if you can kind of see that white line in there, all right, the vascular cambium. I've got some pith in the center, but at least I have the vascular cambium that we can try to line up with when you're doing this grafting. So that's taking off of that apple. So we're going to try this on the hibiscus, and if you remember, you guys did take cuttings from the tropical woody stemmed hibiscus we had, the variegated one, and also the solid green one. And these are a different species than what I have here in this plant. These two are actually hardy hibiscus that you could plant outside, and they're hardy to our zone. So it might not take putting some of these buds on there because they are in the same genus but different family, and we talked about the difficulties that come with that. But we're gonna try it and see what happens. So just due to the size of the buds I have from like the variegated hibiscus and the solid green one. I'm most likely going to be placing the buds on the main stem of the hibiscus because that's the thickest stem I have. These other branches are pretty thin. So because again, a lot of these buds have already broken, it's kind of different dealing with them, but I'm going to take off the leaves because they're just going to be in my way. See if I can't find one that I think will be slightly easier to work with. I think I'm gonna go for that one there. So when you're trying to collect the bud, again, it's easy when you have something to press down against. And so you're going to start your knife going down under your bud at an angle. And this is super easy to cut because it's not dormant. And then you just come through at the bottom with a straight cut in to finish that off. Now, I didn't go as deep as I would like, so I check it out, see if I can see the vascular cambium. I guess it's not too bad, but let me show you if you don't cut deep enough. Oop. So if you don't cut deep enough, you can see that light green tissue there is actually like the bud tissue, that meristem tissue, and really no vascular cambium. So that's kind of what a bad cut looks like. This one's slightly better. Let me see if I can get deeper on one of these. And again, it's a little hard because it's already broken bud, it's not dormant. And I am having my fingers below the knife, but all right, yeah, that one's slightly better. The bud tissue, you can't really see it, so I went deep enough finally. And the vascular cambium, let's see, there'd be some of it right there. And it could be enough to connect to the stem of the new hibiscus. So I'm gonna say that I've got those two good buds there. Again, when you have a cut stick that you're cutting the buds off, it is a little bit easier to have your fingers below it because you're not going to just slice down. But if you're dealing with a plant like this, you definitely don't want to have your fingers below you because you're putting so much pressure down. So you want to have your hands above you, and it's not as easy. All right, and then again, cut from the bottom. Oh, I'm gonna break my stem. Oh. Yeah. So this looks a little bit different than the tropical one. You can see the vascular cambium, the white there. So again, I'm not sure how well it's gonna work out putting these different species bud on here, but we're going to find out. So we're going to, if you were wanting to just use this as a rootstock, you'd place a bud somewhere lower so that you could cut off the top and only be using this as a rootstock. But because I don't think it's going to work very well, we're going to put the bud up higher. That way, if it doesn't work, I am not cutting off my whole plant. I'm just trying to get it to work up here. But I am going to get some of the leaves out of my way so that I can have a nice somewhat clean area to work with. So to place a bud, a chip bud on here, you basically need to make a cut just like the one you made to get your bud. So on the stem that I want to place it, I'm going to find an old node that basically I'm going to replace. And again, you make your initial cut, sliding it, oh, that one went a little bit easier, sliding it down past that bud, and then you have to make your cut back here to kind of finish that off. Let me see if I gotten through that. Almost. All right, so I've removed a bud. And I took off a little bit more space than what the buds I have here to put on, but that's okay. It'll heal up. So I'm going to just place this chip bud right here where I took that other cutting off. Make sure that it lines up. And then this is the part where you've got to decide how you're going to help the plant heal this wound. So you could, oh, didn't realize that I had cut my plant there. You could choose to use wax. You could choose to use parafilm. But we are going to actually use rubber bands. Remember, you want to keep it humid there to help with the healing process, but you also want to make sure that you're keeping out any pests. So I'm going to try not to break this new bud off and keep it aligned. I'll start from the bottom. And some of these leaves are just gonna have to get removed because they're in my way. So this is to help keep it in place, but also to try to help line it up correctly and possibly also keep it humid. Because I made a cut bigger than the chip bud I had, I do have some open wound area that either I've got to try to cover with the rubber band or cover with wax. If you remember some of the videos, they showed using just like parafilm. Really any kind of wax helps keep it humid, keep anything out from that wound, and help that wound heal. So the other important part is to not cover the bud itself, especially because it's not dormant. So we're gonna have new growth coming out from there, and I don't want to restrict that. So I wanna allow that part to breathe and be able to come out while covering the cut I made though. So for hibiscus, especially because it's not dormant, I would imagine that at least within a week, I'd find out if it took or not. So again, it's a matter of it being compatible, being a different species. I might have difficulties with that, but it's in the same genus, so maybe it would be all right. I'm going to, so this particular hibiscus here is the pink swirl hibiscus, so it had a nice pink bud to it. This other one is called honeymoon red. So I'm actually going to take a bud off of the pink swirl and put it onto the red honeymoon because that should take, because they're the same species, just different cultivars. So we're going to try that one next. And we're also going to try, tea budding. I don't know if I don't know if this bark will slip as well as I want it to. So if the tea budding doesn't work, I can show you on the dark green leafed tropical hibiscus because that one does have bark slippage going on. So I'm going to find a bud I want to take. Maybe I have one from one of these stems I had to cut off. Yeah. Just get my leaves out of the way. But you can see at the node that's where their tiny little bud is for their new growth. So that is what I'm going after. All right, so that one wasn't super deep. I mean, I still have vascular cambium there, and the tiniest little bit of pith, the center of the stem. It might have been better to get a little bit more pith, because that would mean that the bud tissue would be well protected, but it should work. But I'll just cut another one just in case I happen to do it better the second time. Yeah, that one's too thin. And I want to be able to have my fingers above. Oops. I don't know why it's being so difficult. Well, I did go deeper on that one. You can see a little bit more of the pith tissue. Didn't make an exactly clean cut, but definitely went a little bit deeper, so that one might be a little bit of a better chip bud there. But for tea budding, you start with the same type of bud, a chip bud, but you make a different cut on the parent plant it's going onto. So I'll pull my honeymoon red one over here, and again, this main stem, as you can see, it's actually not growing a whole lot. It had a problem with getting too dry one weekend. So I'm gonna cut it back slightly, and then I'm gonna use the spot where it's still alive but nothing's growing. I'm gonna use that as an excellent place to put the other cultivar to see if it will take. So get those old nodes out of my way. Actually, that one right there. Gotta turn it towards me. And I'm gonna cut some stuff out of my way. So I think right here would be a great place to put it. Nice thick stem, and we'll see if I can get that. So for doing a tea budding, it's handy to have a grafting knife that has this particular blade on it. I think in one of the videos I showed, it showed this, but you'll see why. So I'm actually gonna make this has the same blade on it too. So I'm just gonna make my first cut with a normal grafting knife, and you actually go in between the nodes, and again, watch out for your fingers. So for tea budding, you're making a literal T. All right, so cut down, and then a cut across, uppercase T. Let's see if I got deep enough. That's where this other tool comes in. Oh, you can use that to get under the bark, peel it back a little bit. I'm gonna try to be ambidextrous here. There we go. Oh. So again, it's easiest done on stems that are just flushing out with spring growth. So it's got active phloem moving, but still stiff bark. That makes it a little bit easier to peel back than this hibiscus that is just all herbaceous growth. But yeah, I kind of figured it wouldn't make the best tea budding. But you make that tea slit because then it just creates this nice little pocket to hold the bud in. And same thing, you need to wrap it to hold it in place. But you've got the nice edges of the tea to do that as well. Let me get it back in there. On the rubber band, but it is gonna hold the bud in place. And again, I didn't cover up that actual bud that I just placed in there because that is where the new growth will come out of. So I didn't grab a big part of that apple stem, but this is from apple trees that were in the greenhouse because of Trevor's project. And so I would think that these are actually at the point where it would be a pretty good example of a tea bud. So again, you'd have a bud from another tree that you wanted to take. You go between the inner nodes and you're just making an uppercase T. Let me see if... All right, so face it your way. You see how this little curve of that blade allows me to get under the bark without breaking it off? That's what I'm talking about for bark slipping and being a good time for budding. So do the other side here. So a little bit different than the hibiscus, where it was just kind of flaking off super easily or not letting me get a very thick part of the bark. That makes it, and this is a hibiscus, so it's not going to work, but it makes it very easy then to take your new bud, and you see how it slides in there. And I didn't make as big of a cut as I would need for that, but then you've got the bark that will actually start to heal over this chip and help keep it in place and hopefully make a good union for that. So if you did buy a grafting knife, or if you have one and you think it might be fun to try some different grafting on plants you have at home, do try, but also let someone know that you're doing it in case you do have any issues. And yeah, just be careful of your fingers. I have had a lab where someone needed to go get stitches, but again, I don't want you to be afraid of the knives. It's just about remembering where your hands are at and not cutting down towards yourself. So that is chip budding and tea budding, the two things we talked about in lecture. And that is it for this week. So see you later.